Okay, there are a lot of good qualities about this vehicle. I'm just going to run through what I think is apt to this review. First of all, it's got enormous side mirrors, which I always love in a car. The difference it makes in your visibility is immeasurable. Okay, technically speaking, they may not be quite as aerodynamic, but to be fair, there's a lot that can be done around that. Now, the rear view vision is pretty minimal, and it is obstructed partially by the headrests. Yet again, this is a feature which a lot of car manufacturers are not picking up on. If there's no one sitting in the back seat and the car's got headrests, surely it wouldn't be rocket science to make them, technically speaking, disappear. Now, the drive of this car is rather nice. It does in many ways remind me of a BMW, mid-range BMW, but the difference between this and a BMW is this doesn't have the same build quality. Now, generally speaking, it's quite a solid car. It's nicely put together, but there are avenues on this car which really are tacky and awful. I mean, this cheap, horrible plastic here is the sort of thing you would expect on a calculator made in China or some kind of crappy digital watch. It does feel a bit crappy. The dashboard's nice and solid, the dials look well manufactured, the steering feels good, but there are some avenues which just let it down. And I think if Lexus had put a little bit more of a quality feel to certain things, then this car would be a real serious contender for the mid-range luxury market. Now, on this particular car, the brakes are awful. I don't know whether it's the model or whether it's the actual vehicle itself, but if you're going to test drive one of these, have a look at the brakes. The brakes don't seem to be this vehicle's hot spot. In fact, they seem to be really quite terrible. Secondly, the clutch is very heavy as well. It's hard to determine whether this is the model again or whether the individual car. So you can take one for a test drive, have a look at the clutch, have a look at the brakes. I'd put more emphasis on the brakes. The brakes are actually a little bit frightening on this. Okay, the interior of the car is, well, to be fair, it's a little bit bland, you know. The seats are a bit bland. They're nice and comfortable, but they're looking a bit boring, and it could do with a bit more of a GT feel to the interior of this. But my attention keeps getting drawn back to the center console. It really does let it down. It's got that sort of Hyundai, Nissan sort of feel to it. The Japanese car market seems to have sort of rubbish like that. But the general layout of the center console is pretty good, actually. It all looks pretty accessible. This is a diesel car, and I have to say it's by no means a diesel that's going to be pulling heavy loads, but it does tug away quite nicely. And as you come along a dual carriageway or a motorway, it quickly nips into speed, and it feels very comfortable and certain as it pulls through the gears. It is actually a very good drive, and I've been quite impressed with the shock absorbers on this car. They're not rigid by any means, but the car does feel very seated, and when you go around corners you do feel like you're squatting. The car doesn't seem to lean all over the place, which is really quite reassuring. There's not any sort of bouncing around and like a boating effect. If there was anything I could be a little bit critical of, the steering feels a little bit anaesthetised. I want to feel the tyres on the road, I want to feel the steering. What I'm actually feeling through this car is just power steering, so I kind of feel like I'm turning a wheel which isn't connected to anything. The interconnection has been disconnected in that sense, and that's okay if you're driving a huge luxury vehicle and you just want the comfort side of the vehicle. But this is a relatively sporty saloon, and it'd be nice to have a bigger connection with the road. But I have to say, all in all, this vehicle is really a very good one. It's certainly far better than any Ford of the similar category. It won't top a BMW, Certainly won't top a Mercedes either, but in the Japanese car market it's certainly one of the chief contenders. But it's still, you know, without repeating myself, it's still carrying some attributes and traits of a lower end crappy Nissan or something like that. You know, these simple little things, if they ironed them out and got rid of them, you'd be dealing with a luxury car market here. It is a solid car. I do feel quite safe in this vehicle. It does have that sort of enclosed vault sort of feeling that you get with higher end cars. I would imagine anybody watching this video is probably thinking about buying one. So to really summarize, I would say have a look at the brakes on the vehicle, have a look at the clutch. The clutch was heavy. The steering does feel rather anaesthetized. There's nothing really else I can say about issues that you need to look out for, because the car is very, very good. It's by no means brilliant, but it's a very comfortable car to drive, and the engine is good. The gears is a 6-speed gearbox, and I tell you that 6th gear is just, it makes such a difference to a vehicle. This would be a very comfortable vehicle to drive a big distance in, up and down a country. It's certainly more than capable of that. And even though it's a diesel, it does seem to be able to pull away nicely, and I think you'd be quite confident to overtake a lorry on the motorway. Yes, it does go quite well. This is a great car. Take it for a test drive. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. If you can see past this cheapness, which is not prevalent within the vehicle, it's only in certain areas. If you can see past that, I think you all agree that this is a very, very good vehicle for the value of the money that you're probably going to pay for it. I don't think you're going to retain a high resaleable value on a car like this, but in terms of reliability, the Japanese are certainly coming out near the top. So look at the brakes, look at the steering, and look at the clutch. And if I can just finalize, I would say changing gears on this is a little bit feeble. It doesn't feel certain, it doesn't feel like it's as taut as it could be. The 6th gear is great, but it feels a bit cheap. You know, if you were blindfolded and put in this car, you'd know straight away you were not dealing with German engineering. It's got this Japanese quality to it, and it's not the best. But if I had to give it a score out of 10, it's certainly around the 7.5 mark.